My name's Dave Collings. I'm the National Strategy Manager for Hitachi, based in Sydney. A little bit about my background. I've been connected with mining for about 35 years, originally from the UK. I've worked in Singapore, Australia, Mongolia, South Africa, Canada, pretty much all over, now based in Sydney. What I want to talk about today is our new Hitachi online parts portal, which we launched back in April. It's been very successful, and it's pretty much been a solution to a pretty big problem that we've had for a long time. So just before we talk a little bit about the system and demonstrate it later on, I just thought I'd share a little bit about Hitachi, just to give you some idea of the complexity of our business and the scale, and hence why this was a big problem that we had to solve. So obviously Hitachi, we're part of the global Hitachi group. The global Hitachi group employs about 335,000 people globally, over about 1,000 different companies. Our interests are as varied as trains and infrastructure, financial services and construction machinery. In terms of what we do in mining technology, we like to think of ourselves as, we're not the biggest, but we're probably one of the most advanced in terms of the intelligent mining systems that we have in some of our equipment. So we're at the forefront of autonomous haulage systems that are happening all over Australia now. You've probably read about driverless trucks. We're also heavily involved with ICT around even mid-sized excavators, using satellite systems to make sure the excavator is in exactly the right position and it's doing the optimum amount of work. So just as a little insight, all of our Hitachi equipment across Australia, every day we pick up a signal from the satellite that flies over Australia every night and reports back to us in terms of whether they've got a high level oil temperature reading, whether they're due a service, whether they're due some critical maintenance, whether they're due an upload of some software, and we're able to ring our customers that morning and often say to them, did you know you've got a high temperature reading on this piece of kit? Because of what we're actually picking up through the satellite. So we're quite advanced in terms of what we do in terms of technology. Unfortunately, we're probably not as advanced in terms of our back office systems and the way we manage our parts catalogues and the way we've interacted with customers, hence why we had a bit of a problem we needed to solve. We sell a number of branded mining equipment, trucks and excavators across Australia, including John Deere. They're also quite active in the forestry market. And obviously the big piece of what we do is around the Hitachi construction and mining products. The biggest of these machines, we just sold a couple of these to Gina Reinhardt, retail for about $13.5 million. So it's a pretty big piece of the kit, and it's big pieces of investment. We have 26 sites across Australia, and in Australia we employ just over 1,000 people. And in terms of our parts business, we actually sell every year about $363 million worth of parts. We stock 60,000 different parts in Australia, but the overall potential number of parts that we could stock, depending on demand and what happens in the future, is something like 850,000. So it's an incredibly massive number of parts out there in the family of companies. And we make about 35% of our revenue. We do about $1 billion a year in total sales, and about 35% of that comes from parts. I think the thing to mention about parts is, when you're buying a piece of machinery for $13.5 million, you expect the OEM who sells you that piece of kit to service it and support it. So there's a real expectation that all of the critical items they need, not just for routine maintenance, but for emergency breakdowns, are going to be available. They don't want to wait 12 hours, 24 hours, or they don't want to have an excuse to go from Japan, because obviously the production costs in mining and the loss opportunity is massive. So the service expectation from our customers is absolutely paramount. As well as our 26 branches across Australia, we run a central 24/7 call centre in Sydney. And this is really just a one location where we can service all of our customers 24 hours, 7 days a week. So they can call if they wanted to place emergency orders for parts at the weekend or in the middle of the night. They could call if they wanted to arrange a serviceman to go out and do some emergency repairs. Or they could call just to check on their pricing and their quotes and on the orders that were in the system. And I think the key thing is when we first started this project, we realised we were getting about 7,000 calls every month into that call centre. So we have an awful lot of customers across Australia, we have an awful lot of parts, we have a high demand from a lot of customers, so we get a lot of calls. And that call frequency costs us a lot of money to resource that. So we really wanted a solution where customers could interact with us a little bit easier and see what stock was available, see what their price was, raise quotes, order those parts. If they could do that without actually interacting with somebody at our branch or somebody in the 24/7, that would be a major efficiency for us and in a lot of cases for the customers. So we really needed to change, and I think we realised that, probably going back, Tracy, what would it be, about 2 years?
Yeah, probably about 2 years ago.
About 2 years ago, we were really saying that, we had the mining boom in Australia. We were very lucky that the decline didn't really hit us as much as we thought, so we were still quite busy. We bought a lot of machines out there that required ongoing maintenance. So we were very busy even after the mining boom started to take off. And the number of calls and the number of requests we were getting was just up to explode, so we really needed a solution. I think it's fair to say that while we were at the forefront of some really smart technology engineered into our trucks and excavators, we probably weren't at the forefront in terms of our parts catalogues. And some of our systems didn't talk to each other. Customers would like parts catalogues updates quite regularly, price lists quite regularly, and unfortunately our systems back in the day were probably a little bit long in the tooth to really cope with the way customers' expectations have changed. I think the other thing as well is that even though a lot of our customers had suffered during the mining downturn, the cost pressures that were on them after the decline continued. So a lot of customers now, instead of just ordering parts, would really ring around and check the quotes. So a large mining customer, if he was going to do a major repair on a machine worth $13.5 million, he might be spending $500,000 in parts. So he'd go and get quotes from a number of different suppliers. He'd want to see those quotes on an Excel. He'd want all the detail about the part numbers. So that, again, was creating an awful lot of work for us to be able to generate that material just in terms of the quotes we needed to provide to a lot of mining customers so they could get authorizations in their own system. So we really needed a solution to help us with that. So ultimately, we realised we wanted it to be a little bit easier for our customers to deal with us. And we really wanted a way that we could share our parts manuals and the updates that happen to those parts manuals a lot easier than what we were doing in the past with sending discs out and so on. We really wanted a timely solution so that we could share the pricing, particularly for contract pricing, because a lot of organisations don't just order $500,000 worth of parts. There's quite a rigmarole of a process that they would go through, so they really need to see that quote in its entirety before they can actually press the button and submit an order. We really wanted to reduce that load on our call centre, because the idea was that if you look at that number of calls that we were getting in our call centre, a lot of it was quite mundane. It might be just people ringing up for a filter, which might only be $120. But it's still taking 3 or 4 minutes for someone to answer that call, look at that customer's details, provide them that price, check that availability. Whereas we wanted to free up those people so they could work on quotes for $500,000, not $120. So hence why we started working with Tracy from DS TechRite, and the important seemed to be the ideal solution. So I'll ask Tracy just to demonstrate this system. It's been in use now since April. So Tracy, demonstrate please.
It's not that Dave doesn't know how to use it.
I think one thing when we launched the system that was quite important to us was a lot of people say, where's the user guide for it? We said there isn't one that's delivered. So we wanted this to be like an Apple iPhone, where you just go to unbox it, just register and use it, which is how it works. So it is very easy to use.
So I've actually put this as if I was a brand new user. So we have, and like Dave was just saying, we wanted to make sure, obviously when we're talking about these customers, we don't have an opportunity to speak to them or train them or anything else. So we really needed to make sure that the overall solution was something that you Google, you click on a link in an email, you click on a link out of a flyer, whatever it is, you click there and you can basically get from beginning to end without anything. So with any assistance at all. So what you will notice is there's a series of videos. If by chance you do now go to the Hitachi website and go here, trust me, you will hear my voice. So if you don't like it, don't click on the links. But essentially what I will sort of show you is how the system does look, and we've worked through making sure that a user can get from beginning to end quite easily. Before I do dive in though, we had a little bit of a challenge where we had to all of a sudden get all this information. So I'm sure you can imagine that if we start talking about Hitachi pieces of equipment that are sold here in Australia, we have hundreds and hundreds of parts books. So for one particular model, we can have up to 4 parts manuals. We might have a couple of different engines, we'll have an inner catalogue, a basic catalogue, and we had to get all that information into Link 1. So we had to, before we even got to having a look at the pretty end thing, we had to work out how to convert millions and millions and millions of lines of parts information into Link 1 books. And we were able to do that programmatically, which was fantastic. So basically we were able to take away a lot of the manual work that anyone who's been building books knows. So we actually do that as a whole process now. The Hitachi data gets updated out of Japan every 6 months, so our process is actually all, as soon as that update hits, we can have those books out within a number of days. So we actually do quite a lot of work to just compare and publish all that enormous amount of data. So basically the idea is when a user comes to the online portal is that they can register for an account. I'll quickly show you what that looks like. I will excuse that my system, my computer here, has an extreme resolution, hence why my screen looks like this. If you visit it yourself, it won't be quite that bad. But every user will register in line with what their customer number is. So every Hitachi customer knows what their company customer number is, and from there they're able to retrieve all of their pricing, their addresses, so it really opens up their whole use of the system. Being that I may have been here before, I'm just going to click in as an administrator. So I'm going to show you at this point, we have designed the system for 2 types of users. Firstly, we have Hitachi customers, but we also have Hitachi sales reps. So if I was a mine site and my Hitachi rep's coming out to me at that point in time, if he wants to generate a quote for me, an order for me while he's there, he needs to be able to retrieve my pricing. So as the administrator account, I will say this is in line with an Hitachi sales rep. So his next option is to then choose what customer is he currently working with. Okay, so that it retrieves that customer's information. If I'm a customer, basically it skips that process and comes directly to here. Okay? So there's a few differences that you'll notice from this from a normal Link 1 screen. We actually don't use the tree structure. We've put in these nice thumbnails, nice pretty pictures. Okay, so at this point I can choose which particular brand from Hitachi I want to look at. Okay, I also have the advanced search. Anyone was here before, I did ask Ken about that search. So basically this search, I can search any part of a word and it basically goes through the entire catalogues, entire book library, and searches for anything, gives me a result of anything that has a single, any type of match. So what I am going to look is, let's go to Hitachi. Oops, went back a bit far. You'll see we've got these nice little, I'll click the right one, no. So once I get down here, these are the categories. So was anyone here before when Ken was talking about categories? You open up the manufacturer, you'll then have those categories, the open books. So our categories are using thumbnails. So once I'm in Hitachi, I'm looking at an excavator. So there's everything from large, medium and mini excavators in this solution. We'll pick our particular model that we want. And here are all the catalogues available for that particular model. So what this is able to get around for anybody who has worked with what was the old system is you used to be able to put in a model number like the EX2600-6, and you would get every combination of that model that is sold across Hitachi globally. So this solution has allowed us, so from a user perspective, to really drill down and only look at what is relevant for the customer who's currently in here right now. Okay? So once we get down here, everything else is pretty much a little bit of link one across the middle section here. So we have our table of contents, we have our pictures, and we have our parts. Okay, so even from a perspective, I can drill down. It's just a little bit slow with it's purely the internet connection, it's not the system, trust me. Okay, but all of this sort of type of functionality is exactly the same as what you would be used to. Okay, so I can come down, I can select my parts, and then as typical, we add them to the shopping cart. Now it's at this point, I love my high screen resolution, it's at this point where we have something a little bit different. Okay? Once it hits our shopping cart, oh look, here's your videos. You guys want to know how to request a quote? I don't need to do this, I'll just play the video, you can listen to me instead. But basically, once we start adding items to the shopping cart, what it's actually done is in line with my customer code. So it's telling me who the customer code is up here. I've got 6P construction. It's gone and retrieved for that particular part number, what is my contracted pricing with Hitachi. It is also telling me what the national availability. Okay, so does Hitachi have it in stock? And the answer is yes. Okay, so at this point, I can actually continue to go through and build up my shopping cart. Okay. So there's a few enhancements, I'll tell you what's coming, which is even more exciting. But right now, as it sits, the idea is that the customer can go through and he knows exactly what he needs to get. Okay, he's got his pricing, he's got his availability. Okay, once he has built up his little shopping cart here, okay, he's got a couple of options. One is to request a quote, and one's to submit an order. Okay, I'm going to start with the requesting a quotation. So at this point, I know who I am. So we know who the person is, we know what the company is, we know what their pricing, and we know what their availability is, or the availability of those parts. I do have a point here of being able to come and review any of those parts if I want. Okay, so I can update quantities, I can check any of those things, I can do anything I need to do with those parts before I process. Okay. Now what it's also done at this point is it said, okay, from that customer number, go and retrieve from me. Now this is talking to a system called Irium. Has anybody else, other than Dave and DS Tech Rock people, has anyone else ever heard of Irium in their life? Oh, that's because of us. Right, so I'll be absolutely honest with you, Irium is a management system, and from what I've been able to ascertain, the only company in all of Australia that uses Irium is Hitachi. Okay, so
we've got a good deal on that.
Yeah. So Irium actually, they used to have a supporting branch in Sydney, but because they have a limited customers, they actually stopped it and we had to work with France. So it's been a bit of a challenge, but this is directly communicating with Irium. So what it's done at that point in time is for that particular customer code, it's gone and retrieved all of the possible addresses for that customer code. All right. So any of the common ones, anyone that's registered, or any address that is being used before. Okay. But at that point, especially when we talk about mine sites, sometimes you might want to deliver to a different gate, different street around the other side. We can always, oh, I don't like this screen resolution, Brendan.
Yeah.
I think I need to use another laptop when I do this. That doesn't happen normally. Does it, Dave? No, look at this. But basically what I can do at this point in time is I can also enter my own delivery address. Okay, I'm just going to F5 that. Yeah, let's go back to those addresses. So what I can actually do is say I actually want it delivered at Hitachi Towns. Well, that must be associated with this particular customer. Okay? Now, the bottom part, now, when I first met Dave, so Dave came in halfway through this project and I was going, okay, this is what we're doing. He's like, right, who are you? Anyway, we went through all of this process and I said, basically, we need to imagine that this is a corporate version of me going to Super Cheap Auto and buying my filter, buying my hubcaps on a weekend. This is what it is. So we really wanted to make this as simple as possible so that what people do at home, now they're going to be able to do the same thing at work. Okay, and Dave went, you're right, that's exactly what this is. So there is a few extra options, obviously, when you're dealing in a corporate environment that we wanted to achieve. So when we get down to our freight method, there's a couple of different options. First one, as a company, I might have my own freight company, I have my own account and I want to use that. Okay, so that's my first option, which is I'm going to pay the freight. My next one is prepaid, which means Hitachi needs to add something to my quote to tell me how much they're going to charge me for the freight, or I might want to pick it up. Okay, so none of those should be too difficult. Now, I will tell you that if it's Hitachi's paying for the freight, what that does is it triggers emails off for someone to go quote freight, and it tells the customer, oh, we're going to finalise this quote for you. Here's what it is now, but we're going to finalise it later once we know what the freight option is. Apparently, it's really hard to estimate big stuff. Okay, we can't. Someone needs to get involved for that. But okay, so if I'm going to pay for my own freight, at this point, I can then choose from a list of nominated freight companies here in Australia who I'm using. Okay. And then obviously, I'm expecting Hitachi to call up Country Courier and say, yep, you need to come pick up this really, really big wheel hub and what accounts are going to go on. So at this point, I can also enter what is my account number with that particular freight company. Okay? Now, I can also nominate how I want it to be delivered to me. Now at this point, this is all I need to know for a quote. Okay? All I'm doing is I want to know how much is this going to cost me. I might need it for, my boss needs to approve it, they need to, did I push that? There we go. I might need to actually do the whole process, I might need to get approval process before I start going and actually check some of my parts.
You clicked it twice.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
That's what happens when I'm trying to drive and talk at the same time. There we go, let me just open it. So here we go. So what you would do if I hadn't clicked it twice is that I then come to this screen that gives me a complete summary of my quote. So I actually have an official quote number that if I have any queries, I can actually ring 24/7 and I can issue them that quote number and they'll be able to look it up straight in Irium. So all this is directly inputted into Irium. Even now, this is not smoke and mirrors. There is a test Irium environment and all of this is now 100% in there. We are interacting right now, even on a bad connection. So I can actually now call 24/7, I can talk to them about everything to do with this. I can come up and go, you need to tell me what these are. The reason I say example is because that was me playing around. I should have cleared it out before I opened today. But you can see here is all my information. Okay. Now this is to be confirmed because there are some parts in my car that we don't quite know what that is. That might be because Hitachi doesn't stock them out of, but what's going to happen then is the branch will then ring them. From a quote, their account representative, someone's going to ring them and do something about it. Okay? And we have this quote is valid for 30 days. Now I will say from an OEM perspective, that actually works. If I come in and re-reference this quote on day 29 and I process it to an order, even if my pricing had changed, that pricing is kept. It is kept for 30 days. All those business rules have been held in here. But if I came in on day 32 and tried to process this to an order, it would say your pricing's been changed, it needs to be re-quoted. So the entire business process flow has been followed. Okay, I can now print it, but what has also happened in the background is I've received an email. I've received an email that says here's your quote and here's a PDF copy of your quote. And what's also happened is at this point in time, the branch that's responsible for that location has also received an email and says you've got a couple of pieces, you need to go and look at some pricing and some availability on some parts we don't know. Okay, something weird's going on. If there was freight to be quoted, so you also have to go and do freight. Okay, if there was some remanufactured or superseded parts involved, they also say you need to go check this to make sure we're giving them the best deal. So we've actually put all these different business decision process flows inside of the application. But the customer doesn't know. He's just going to get a nice call and he's going to go, oh, look how good my Hitachi counter, and he knows exactly what he's calling. He's been told. Okay, but at this point, I might go to my boss and say, okay, it's going to cost me X amount of dollars. Okay, and he goes, okay, that's great. Go ahead and place the order. Okay, so once I come back into my Hitachi system, this is my quote. This little blue button means I can now proceed it to an order. So what it'll do is it'll look up everything on that quotation. Okay, it's got it loading. So there's all the parts that existed. Okay, there's my address that I selected, so it's still got Hitachi Townsville it's going to get delivered to. Okay, if freight's already been quoted, any changes that, so obviously if they've quoted freight and then I come in here and maybe say, oh no, Hitachi can pay for it, it'll be cheaper. Okay, do I want to allow partial delivery? Right, so obviously we want to be able to capture that from the customer if that's what they want. Now the next thing is how do we turn that from a quote to a purchase order? Oh, sorry, a quote to an order. Okay. Obviously, our biggest thing is we want a purchase order from the customer. Okay. We want a commitment they're going to pay. Pretty obvious from a business perspective. Okay. So we get that information from them. Okay. The next thing is a preferred delivery or pickup date. Now, obviously, sometimes whether we're talking about emergency stock, whether we're just talking about they're just putting stock in the warehouse, sometimes this is quite important. Okay, so this has some business rules around it. If I tell them right now, I want it all delivered to me by Friday, okay, that actually triggers some extra stuff. It tells the 24/7 there's an order that has to be delivered within the next 3 days. Okay, there's a whole bit of business post. Here you go. So it even tells me, being requested for within the next 3 days, you need to make sure that they're going to be able to get it to you. Don't just expect it. Okay? But then 24/7 are also told you better make sure you can deliver in the next 3 days. Okay? Now I have, here's my checkout. So now I've got a new number because now it's not a quote anymore, it's an order. Okay? So there's my order. Okay? It's got all my purchase order details on it. It's all my information, and I've got all my official T's and C's as well. Now at that point, I can print it out. I can also go and I will get an email with the PDF copy, plus 24/7's got an email with the PDF copy, so we all know exactly, and we can reference at any point, we know exactly what's been communicated to the customer. We also have a reference point, obviously we want that traceability. Okay? So at this point, I just love this full screen or not. Okay, so there's a few things that we've put in here that we've put in the new, this is the test environment. This stuff's actually currently in testing because we've added some new functionality because customers have asked for it. I know there's another side with more, but I'll show which ones are in this. Is that all right, Dave? So when we put this out to the market, I know Hastings is here, really sorry if you want to know you're a customer. But when we put this out to the market, the biggest thing we had feedback from was CATSYS allows me just to directly enter parts. Okay? Now, anyone who's been around knows that CATSYS has been around since a while. Okay? Being polite, no, it's been around a while. Okay? CATSYS has been around forever, and anybody in this industry will know that we all are creatures of habit. It was the very first system like it was, and we're all familiar with how it works. Okay? Komatsu have a version as well, and now we have this new Hitachi system. So one bit of feedback we got back was that when we come directly into the Hitachi system, I already know my part number because I just pulled it off the truck and it's stamped on the side. I don't need to go to the parts catalogue. I just want to enter that number and I want to go away. Make sense? So we'd taken that ability off because we wanted them to browse the catalogues, and then we got told to quickly add it back on. So I've just added this from the main browse screen, so customer logs on. They come to picking their brands if they choose, or they can come to the express parts entry screen. So what the express parts entry, did I get that? No. The express parts entry basically leads me straight to my shopping cart, very similar to the Caterpillar WebSys solution. And from this point in time, I just add my parts, and I can sit there and I just enter my part numbers and I go for gold. Now, Dave, can you give me a valid Hitachi part number?
Ooh, it's top of my head. No.
Gosh.
No.
Here's one I prepared earlier. So what you'll also notice is that at this point, I can go, yep, just enter that part number. Now what we've done is we've done a lookup facility, so once it goes back to Irium, it'll say, okay, for that particular part number, what brand is it? Because obviously we're dealing with Hitachi, we're dealing with Bell, we're dealing with Donaldson, we're dealing with John Deere. So it'll go back and it'll say, okay, that part number belongs to what brand that we sell. Okay, so it works that out. It's even gone, obviously it can't pull this from a Link 1 book because we don't know where it came from, but what it does do is it'll pull back the description from Irium. Okay, so this means that if the user then creates a quotation, it means it actually has some useful information in it. Okay, and at that point it's also gone and checked its price and availability as well. Okay, purely based off the part number. So we have this express entry, so basically without going via the parts catalogue now they can just enter those parts. Okay. The other thing we had was that some of Hitachi's customers are places like Maxi Parts. And tell me if I get the business case wrong, but Maxi Parts will order lots of things like Donaldson filters, and sometimes they will have a requisition list that's 400, 500 line items long. Okay? And the last thing they wanted to do, they really liked the fact they had an online system, but the last thing they wanted to do was to come in here and re-enter 400 line items out of their SAP system. So what we wanted to do, and what we've done, is we've come up with a way that once they get that out of SAP, and they're just getting CSV files out of SAP, out of their requisition list, is we actually now have an import parts function. Okay? Oh look, there's another video to talk you. So you've seen these video links popping up? So because what actually these are is cookies. So as a user, these won't appear next time. But it's a good way that we're going to release new functionality to customers at the same time. So if you come in here after, being a user for 4 months, and all of a sudden you see, oh, there's a new how-to video, it's actually our way of releasing new functionality to you. So yeah, it's a good way of us communicating with our customers without making it too obvious and annoying. But basically our import parts function, if I need to, I can actually come in here and I can download a CSV file. Okay, I can download that CSV file, remap my data if I need to, or go from there. But a lot of the customers' feedback that we got was that they can already get these CSV files, so how do we just get it from what they have to in here? So what we did is we went, okay, let's allow you to, here's one I prepared earlier. I think I've got one here. I do. Okay, so I can select my file, select whether it's comma, tab, space, or pipe symbol, how it's delimited. Okay, and the next thing is I say my data has some headers. Okay, so we know that we've got a header row in my file. Does everyone understand what I mean by header row? Okay. Once I do this initial upload, what it actually does is it goes and interrogates my CSV file for my header rows. Okay, so this is actually the fields in my source document, right? And what it does is under this I get to map them to the fields in the link one selection list. So they can be in any order, doesn't matter whether it's coming from SAP, JD Edwards, if someone created it in a spreadsheet. Okay, once I can map it from there to here. Okay, well it says, oh congratulations, you successfully inputted them to your cart. Fantastic, let's go back.
Does that allow you to just upload from, say, an Excel spreadsheet as well? Or?
You have to go from Excel out to a text format. Only because from an Excel format we can't guarantee everything will go, how do you stop it? XLS, so at least if you go out to a text format, your file size is much smaller, your upload will be far quicker, there's a whole lot of benefits. But even in Excel, you could just file save as CSV and it would be fine. Right, so what we'll now see is here's a list of all those parts that I just brought in from my spreadsheet. Now, to let you know, I can show you, but my spreadsheet had manufacturer, part number, description and a quantity. Remember that? They're the only fields I mapped. But the minute I uploaded them, it went and said, okay, I'm going to go interrogate Irium, and it's done it all live while you were watching on a pretty bad connection. Is it sitting there going, okay, let me go and retrieve my pricing and availability for every single one of those parts in my selection list. And it's even told me it's gone and been updated for the items that I had added to my cart, which I can then go forward now, request my quotation, submit an order, do what I need to do with those items. Okay, well, I think there's a bit more to come. Did you want to talk about that, Dave? Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, sure. So I guess just the thing to share about the system is, to us, it's very easy to use for our customers. That was absolutely critical. It's very accurate. I don't know if you noticed there, but a lot of those parts have quite strange looking pricing, like $23,997.43. Now that's because a lot of our big contracts with large mining customers are on global rise and fall escalators. The price changes quite regularly, and because we apply certain percentages, you end up with pricing that goes to 2 decimal places. Now the problem is, probably a lot of you know, if you're dealing with customers who are on the SAP system, if you're out by 1 decimal place, you'll have an invoice mismatch and you won't get paid. And that has happened a lot. So imagine if we put a bill in for something which is $500,000 and we're out by 1 cent, that will get held up in their system. And through this system, we know it's going to be accurate to 2 decimal places, so that's a big plus. I think just the other sort of thing I wanted to summarise about this system is it's still evolving. we're not done yet. And I think probably if there was 3 lessons to sort of share with everybody, sort of fellow users on this, is the first one is feedback and feedback and feedback. You know, when we started to pilot this with some of our customers, we went out there and sat down with some of the actual users. You know, so this is not just presenting it to, you know, people at the corporate level or people at the head office level. It's actually going out to some sites and getting people who are using this system to sit over the shoulder as they play around with it, to see how intuitive it is and what issues they picked up. But also talk to the users who may be in the back office, who just get fax lists of parts and have to enter them very rapidly. So that feedback is very important. I think the other thing for us, and you know, we're working on a number of enhancements which have come about because of that feedback, is, and this is an advertisement for DS Tech Ride, is to have a vendor who is a one-stop shop. You know, it's really made it a lot easier having somebody who is not just selling you the software, but developing everything else around it as well and being able to troubleshoot. So that's worked really well for us. And I think just the final bit of feedback is just be a bit careful with the usernames, because we allowed all of our customers to set their own usernames, and you can imagine in the mining community there's some very interesting usernames get logged for some of our customers, so perhaps don't do that, learn from our mistakes. So certainly that was all I was going to share, thank you. Hopefully that was useful. If there's any questions. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Tracy.
When you went out to the vehicles, now I asked about the PXL, did you get much feedback on how they want to upload it? Because I mean, there's quite a lot of people using different ERP, and a lot of them, they might not go to CSV. I know you say it's pretty simple, and it is for me as well, but for some users it's not. So I'm just wondering where they said, oh,
so it's the opposite. A lot of customers, you know, like Hitachi actually said to us that CSV files would be quite useful.
It was defined to us, wasn't it, as CSV?
And to be honest, in the format it's in, it's very easy just to open that CSV and then just cut the list of part numbers and the quantities and paste it onto the CSV file.
And I guess that's why we created the template too, so that if people weren't familiar, they could just download it.
yeah, just use that, that's what I'm thinking before.
Yeah, so we wanted to make sure, because obviously the biggest key here was that it didn't matter who the user was, they should be able to sit down and do it without calling 24/7 going, how do I do this? So we sort of, if we give them extra help, then you know, so that's why we gave them the template. There's examples in there, and they can just add to it, basically save it and then upload it. Yeah.
I'm sorry I might have missed something, but because I came a bit late, but say the customer upgrades to a different assembly and whatnot, is that easy to change in one?
The customer assembly, as far as what equipment they have,
Yeah.
doesn't phase us at all. So Dave at the beginning said, so is it, Gina's just bought, what, 2 new $13.5 million machines. Doesn't matter, because she just sees she just goes in and now picks those machines. So whether they're doing maintenance on a mini excavator or whatever, they get to see all
But
of
that's
that.
a complete machine. Say you've got an old machine, you're going to upgrade some of the internals that are spare parts to that machine, then you have to change your Link 1 database to match.
So the Link 1 books in here are as built.
Yeah.
They are as built because that's what comes out of Japan.
Mm-hmm.
We are doing a few customizations. For example, Rio actually has a machine, a hybrid machine, where the bottom half of it is a 3500 excavator and the top half's a 4000. That's right, I've got those numbers right, there we go. So we're actually doing a hybrid version, obviously because Rio said, hang on a minute, I want a parts catalogue that matches my hybrid, so we're combining those two for a unique. But if they were to change an engine out and they knew it was from a 4000, whatever, I'd be suggesting that they then go to the 4000 manual and look at the engine's catalogue because they are separate.
So a lot of times they will know the part number.
Yeah.
Unless it's been superseded.
We've used Link 1 not for other types of equipment, but we generally that equipment we upgrade and whatnot. And then it's too hard to change the database of Link 1 because the process of changing it is just like
Sorry, you're with?
Oh, I'm
Glencore. Oh, yeah, we need to have conversations. So you can do other things as well. We, for a lot of our customers, for example, none of them are here. So I work with BMA a lot, so I actually manage 4 of the Link 1 foresight, so I manage all the books across BMA, and they will have exactly that they've gone, hang on a minute, I've got this machine from Catalyst, I've got this Hastings book, and then all of a sudden they've gone, hang on, we've just put a new air conditioner in at Tracy, what do I do? And Hastings' responsibility is now gone. The machine's been in action for 5-10 years. So what we do is we actually use, we will do a new book for just that air conditioner, and you can use things called cross-reference notes that would work in WinView. So what happens is then when the user navigates down to the old air conditioner page, it comes up and says, you know what, this air conditioner has been replaced. That's the easiest from an end user perspective. This air conditioner has been replaced. Click here to go to the new updated air conditioner. And once you get there, you have a thing, return to base model, and it takes you back. They are simply a matter of 2 little buttons. And you know what, it only appears for that book in that instance. So it allows us to very quickly swap those.
So they have to go back to you essentially to do that, or we do that?
Well, I can certainly teach someone how to do it. It's just normally, say BMA chooses to use me because they know that every time, whether I do it now, 3 months' time, a year's time, or 2 years' time, I'm going to remember how to do it.
Yeah.
Where if they train someone on site, they might not be there in 6 months. But that's just a business decision.
Would you use like a serial number or a driven number and create that number, link that through? Well, I mean, I know with when you filter through serial number and that, if you use that.
It's just, sometimes some parts or some technologies are quite new, and the technology part might change a bit over its life cycle just because it's got improvement, so you have to know. So that part has changed, and changing that in one can be cumbersome, so otherwise you have to do a new book or whatnot. I just wondering what
And
parts.
from Glencore perspective, they'd be getting their data from OEMs, so they'd be tied to it a little bit. This, because it's open to the public, they are as-built machines. They are as-built machines, but there are certain things you can do. Even, for example, I know we've been talking to Glencore about how can Glencore possibly use the Hitachi Online parts portal as from their own SAP system. Hence, I think that's why point number 2 is actually specifically was started by Glencore. So the idea being is when you guys are in a work order in SAP, I know you go out to your own WebView system now, but this would be for Hitachi equipment. You come out to this portal, and then when you bring your parts back, rather than use that shopping cart with create quotes and all that, you actually bring that straight back into your SAP system. So we're in conversation about how to make that work. But basically what you could do is you could be creating your own notes. So if you knew you had a different air conditioner, because at that point Hitachi doesn't know if you've changed a component out on site. And that's your problem, is that they can only manage their data from what they sell. If you change something out on site, then it all of a sudden becomes a custom machine. So how do you manage that difference, and where do we make sure we capture that information? But it's certainly possible, it's just where does the business process fit?
I think the other thing with Tracy, well, it depends on the EAM system, and in that case, maybe it's, and I've spoken to other customers about it. Say, for example, it's a higher cost item, so it mightn't be an air conditioner that's $1,000. It might be a full engine that's $200,000. So basically, the account will say you've got to then track that asset. So actually get back into the asset management system and then link the individual parts of the truck if you want, rather than relying on the ins and outs.
Too easy. Are we breaking in between the next, or am I just starting?